Happy New Year when you're watching this, because I wrote and made this episode well in advance, and also it may not be New Year's when you watch this, considering how much lists I have to make. Anyway, 2024 was admittedly pretty mixed in general, but as we enter a new year, it's good to look forward, mostly to the films, because yeesh, and 2025 seems to have a pretty interesting slate ahead of us, so let's get into it. Number 1, Superman. James Gunn is doing a Superman movie, and if you can see how he managed to balance optimism with the even cruder and weirder elements of the Marvel Universe, and judging by his previous DC work, then he's a perfect fit. It's also exciting to see this kick off another DC film universe that feels more confident and more embracing of the elements of Superman that haven't gotten the love in previous films. I'm really excited to see what James Gunn can do with this. And those were my anticipated films of 2025. Are there any other films you're excited for this year? Please comment below, and also like and subscribe. Hey, do you like movies? Do you like movie reviews? Then this channel has stuff like that. There's Watch This Space, my film review show where I view recent films, and I also make short films, like Correspondence, which is very unique. If you'd like to see stuff like this, then please subscribe to stay updated on my work. Also follow my social media channels as well, so please subscribe to my channel.
Warning, the following video discusses the latest Superman film and will get into spoilers about the film. When the video veers into spoiler discussion, there will be a warning about it that you can skip over. But still, viewer discretion is advised. So James Gunn's Superman is good. The guy who did 3 of the best MCU films surprisingly knows how to make a great superhero film that has a lot of weird, offbeat and obscure elements, and makes them work when added to a Superman film. A film series that often has had trouble trying to leave the shadow of the 1978 film and make it seem new. It has elements like Krypto or his robot assistants, or additional DC characters like Guy Gardner, Hawkgirl, Metamorpho, or Mr. Terrific. We haven't seen goofy stuff like that in a superhero film, especially in a DC film, and it sets itself apart from other films. But I also like how it adds elements from 2 other older films, and you'd be surprised which ones came to my mind when watching it. Yeah, as I mentioned before, the 1978 Superman film has a large cultural footprint. Elements like the design of the Fortress of Solitude, going from an Arctic cave to a crystal fortress, and the S symbol being the symbol of the House of El, has been adapted into comics and other adaptations before, and characters like Lex Luthor's assistant Miss Tessmacher and others have been used in other adaptations like the CW series, or have been added to the comics. And the death of Jonathan Kent from a heart attack has been a major aspect of the character's mythos. But James Gunn's Superman film has a surprisingly enough for me, more connective tissue with Superman 4 for Crest of Peace and, the last Superman reboot, Man of Steel. Crest of Peace is often considered one of the bad ones out of Christopher Reeve's run of films, with bad effects, low budget hampering everything, and Milton Keynes is no New York City, or Metropolis. But one element of the film is that it involves Superman dealing with geopolitical topics. In Superman 4, it has Superman walking to the UN and telling them that he's going to disarm all these countries' nuclear arsenals, and they all go along with it without any prior discussion about it. Gunn's film also deals with geopolitics, namely Superman intervening in conflicts between 2 countries, but unlike Christopher Peace, it deals with the consequences of that. That film also has Lex Luthor involved, and like that film has him trying to benefit from the geopolitical conflict. In Christopher Peace, he's making a play at arms dealing, and in Gunn's film, he's also doing that, but trying to get land. I know he's also doing that just to show he's better than Superman, but I felt it was very similar to Hackman's version of the character, so I thought I'd bring it up here. Warning, this part gets into the spoilers about the film. Best skip this section if you haven't seen the film. You have been warned. Also, Ultraman, who turns out to be a clone of Superman in the end. Well, this does bring to mind Bizarro, and especially with him being sent into the pocket dimension, which seems like a likely setup for Bizarro world. But also in Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, that has Lex Luthor create his own Superman, the Nuclear Man. In a bit of dialogue in the Gunn film, Lex mentions that he was created from a scrap of Superman's hair. Yeah, Gunn, a man who put Howard the Duck in the MCU, is not afraid to reference prior 80s comic book adaptations. Now get Heather Locklear in this universe and he gets a trifecta. Spoiler time is over for now. You can now continue to watch the video. Now there has been lots of comparisons made between this film and the last Superman reboot, 2013's Man of Steel, which I think is fair as Man of Steel tried to go in a different direction from the previous Superman movie, Superman Returns, but the end result is a little bit divisive to say the least. And you can see Gunn build upon the themes and ideas that previous Superman film director Zack Snyder had touched upon in his films. Spoilers again, please skip if you do not want the movie to get spoiled. For instance, how he handles Krypton. While it isn't that much of a focus in his film, but Gunn does make a big change in their depiction of what is usually shown as a more utopian but full civilization as a more colonial one. Man of Steel did touch upon this as well, but with Krypton being more explorers than militaristic. Along with Zordon's plot in that film was to make Earth Krypton with the dubstep machine. But this isn't new. My Adventures of Superman depicted Krypton in a more militaristic fashion as well, and during the New 52 era, Lara was made part of Krypton's military, but it's noticeable when comparing it to the film. Spoiler talk over. Yes, this is a bit indulgent, but it adds to the runtime and, how you gotta catch that algorithm. Also, Gunn's depiction of Lex Luthor feels like a refined version of what Snyder was doing with the character in Batman v Superman. In the DCEU, Lex Luthor was reimagined as a tech billionaire like Mark Zuckerberg because that was the easy screenwriting shorthand for evil industrial villain at the time. They even got Jesse Eisenberg to play an updated version of the post-crisis Lex Luthor, but he also had elements of the mad scientist characterization from the pre-crisis continuity. BVS's Luthor feels a bit derivative of other tech industry characters that were showing up in films and TV at the time, with Jesse Eisenberg's performance feeling a bit too manic. Compare that to Gunn and Nicholas Holt's version of Luthor, and you can see he's a bit more defined and a bit more darker. Gunn, as a writer, knows how to write villains and makes them utterly reprehensible. Him and Holtz's version of Luthor is manic, but he has a menace that makes pretty light film dark, while Eisenberg's Luthor was manic but not that threatening and a bit silly in a film that was trying to be serious. So those were my stray observations about a great movie I watched recently. Do you have any observations you made about this film? Sound off in the comments, and don't forget to share this video, like it, and also subscribe to my channel. And thus, it's the end of the summer. And now it's time to take stock and look back at what we did during it. I mainly watched films, so here's a list of some of my favourite films of the summer season. Superman. James Gunn managed to do what no other Superman movie has done before and embrace the weirdness that is comic books, kicking this new DC universe off on the right foot with a hopeful tone and a timely message. David Corenswet's turn in the trunks is an excellent one, and Nicholas Holt's Luthor is a despicable one. It's a great film. Super, you might say. Warning, this video contains spoilers for Season 2 of Peacemaker. If you haven't watched the show, please watch that and then watch this video, or just watch at your own discretion. And now, Season 2 of Peacemaker has come to an end, and watching it has made me think of something, especially after seeing Superman, is that Peacemaker and Superman are kind of the same character. It's an interesting dichotomy, as Superman and Peacemaker are two different types of heroes. Superman is, well, Superman, the archetypal superhero, which has had many variations based on him. Superman if he's a kid, Superman if he was a teenager, Superman if he was your dad, Superman but at Marvel, Superman if he was black, Superman but Batman's boyfriend, Superman but washed up, Superman but evil but also at Marvel, Superman if he's a kid and also evil. Well, this version of Peacemaker is a variation on various anti-heroes that have shown up in comics. This one takes cues from the 80s version, who changed from his more espionage roots to a more darker and edgier vigilante, who's haunted by his past as part of a trend in comics, trend towards more anti-heroes inspired by the likes of Punisher, Wolverine, and most importantly Watchmen, which in turn had the Comedian, a character inspired by the original Charlton Comics Peacemaker. Superman has been pastiche, and the other one has become a pastiche, but James Gunn gives both Superman and Peacemaker the same type of hurdles, despite their difference in status. In Peacemaker, Chris Smith is a man who's trying to reconcile his upbringing by an abusive white supremacist father and tries to move on from it. In Superman, Clark Kent, or Kal-El, learns that his space parents were not the ideal figures he believed them to be. Parental figures have always been part of James Gunn's work, but it's interesting that the same arc of having to deal with imperfect, to say the least, parental figures has been given both to Superman and Peacemaker. Another interesting aspect is that both characters are defined by music, as you expect from a James Gunn production. In the episode where the 11th Street Kids and Judo Master rescue Chris from Earth X, Adebayo and Judo Master discuss Chris and his love of hair metal, with Adebayo comparing Chris to the music genre, saying, "I just had to open my mind a little and get past the parts that were cheesy, but that's what Chris is like. You just got to open your mind up a little bit and get past the parts that are cheesy." To me, this scene felt similar to a scene in Gunn's Superman film where Clark and Lois discuss the message from his space parents, and the tangent about Clark's taste in punk bands and how Clark's more trust and attitude is the real punk rock. The two characters have musical tastes that are genres that aren't exactly highly praised. It's another interesting comparison between the two characters. Also, both characters' relationship to the wider superhero community is also comparable. Superman's relationship with the Justice Gang isn't exactly on the up and up, while they do work with each other and see themselves as colleagues. Clark even divulging his secret identity to them. He doesn't like their methods. Peacemaker is not respected at all. His frustrations are shown through his endless conspiracies about the heroes he spouts in Season 1 back when he was set in the DCEU. He is proof positive of that, and he's rejected by Maxwell Lord, Guy Gardner, and Hawkgirl at the beginning of Season 2. This also brings me to another comparison. Both of them find comfort in what they thought were the ideal versions of their parental figures. Gary, Superman's robot, keeps mentioning that the Kryptonian message soothes him, and Peacemaker initially finds Earth-X a perfect world for him, but both end up on a rug pulled out under them, and in the end they both find solace in their found families. Now there's some key differences between the heroes as well. For instance, they have a different work-life balance. Superman, as always, keeps up the whole secret identity, with the only person who knows about his heroic side gig at Day Planet is Lois Lane, but it was implied that maybe Perry White and Jimmy Olsen are also privy to it. Compare it to Peacemaker, who doesn't really have a normal job or life and only does government work, but still maintains a social life with his co-workers who know Peacemaker is Christopher Smith. Also, one kills and the other doesn't. That's another important detail, but it's all about the work-life balance for me. James Gunn manages to give one of the most well-known superheroes and one of the most obscure ones similar character beats, creating an interesting juxtaposition between them, showing that while there are differences on some levels, they are still dealing with the same stuff. It'll be interesting to see how the rest of the DC universe will play along with this idea. With the final Peacemaker, there won't be any other DC Universe projects until Supergirl's release next year, so I thought why not do a look back at the series so far and focus on certain aspects that I found interesting. Let's start with Rick Flag Sr. Starting off with probably the only character who's appeared in all three released DC Universe projects so far, Rick Flag Sr., played by Frank Grillo. I feel like he's what Nick Fury was to the earlier MCU films, as the figure usually shows up in each project, often as a tease and as a connective tissue. Now, by the end of Peacemaker Season 2, he takes a more villainous role, which I've seen some people say is inconsistent with his portrayal in Creature Commandos, but then again, in that show, he got manipulated by a princess who feigned attraction to him, and I'm feeling Lex and his lackeys are doing the same to him by helping him try and get revenge on Peacemaker. Speaking of Rick Flag, so it's clear that the remaining elements from the old DCEU are the projects that James Gunn worked on, namely the Suicide Squad and the first season of Peacemaker, with most of the characters adjacent to those projects making a move over to the new universe. But in the episode of Peacemaker, another Rick up my sleeve had Joel Kinnaman appear as two versions of Rick Flag, the one from the mainline universe and the one on Earth-X. And the mainline version mentions his relationship with Enchantress, which occurred in Suicide Squad 2016. Does this mean that that film is canon with the rest of the new DC universe? Maybe not, as that film was a bit reliant on the events of Batman v Superman, but then again, this new universe has embraced retcons like in the comics. So do I think this could leave the door open for Enchantress, or maybe a different version played by a different actress show up, because we saw how Junior's death affected Senior, and maybe Katana as well, considering that she had Rick's back in that film and she can cut people in half with one sword stroke, just like Mona Lawn. It would be advisable not getting killed by her. Her sword traps the souls of its victims. Maybe not. But also we have Metamorpho show up in Superman, and him and Black Lightning were on the Outsiders, so hey, maybe that could be a good way to introduce them. I also know Blue Beetle is getting an animated follow-up with Zolo Maradreña supplying his role, but it remains to be seen if it will reference the film. But considering that film was pretty much isolated and stood on its own, I don't think there'll be much retconning. At the end of Peacemaker, we saw the formation of Checkmate, with its ranks being made up of the cast of Peacemaker. I feel like we'll be seeing them pop up in other projects. Much like how Rick Flag Sr. is this universe's equivalent of Nick Fury, Checkmate could be this universe's equivalent to S.H.I.E.L.D., making sporadic appearances or mentioned in passing. In the comics, well, Mr. Terrific was also a member, and so was Amanda Waller, Adebayo's mother, and considering that she's getting her own series, that might come into play. With a lot of use of Cloak and Dagger spy work and the topic of power, both real and geopolitical, I have a feeling this first chapter, Gods and Monsters, is influenced by the Catalyst arc of Justice League Unlimited. Just a hunch, but I'm feeling a lot of similarities here. Now it's been noted that DC's fictional countries show up in the universe, Kolistan, Baravia, and Johannapur being the most prominent ones. I expect we'll see more of DC's fake foe states like Bialia, which was mentioned in Creature Commandos, Kurak, Markovia, Geoforce was part of the Outsiders, Kaznia, Vlatava, and so on. With what's been released so far, they've all been under the direction of James Gunn, and all contain his creative fingerprint, so it's going to be interesting to see next year, as most of the projects will be held by other creatives, what they bring to the table. While I enjoy Gunn's work, I do hope we get a variety of different voices being brought into each project. One last thing I want to talk about is how this series' attitude to projects and how they be released. It all feels very fluid. Clayface wasn't part of the original announcement in 2023, only coming about because Mike Flanagan had a pitch and that film is currently in production. See also the Sergeant Rock movie that was supposed to be made by director Luca Guadagnino, but that's been put on hold, and the authority might be made in a TV show. It shows there's a fluidity with how these projects are handled at the development stage, unlike Marvel, which has the appearance of it being planned out from the start. So those were some observations about the DC Universe. Is there anything you noticed that I missed? Please comment below, and also like this video and share this with all your friends. Your help is much appreciated. As 2025 draws to a close, it's usually a time to look back, but for this episode, I want to look forward at what 2026 offers us on the film front. Now, a small disclaimer, this list will be films that have a sort of release date, so no independent films that have not found a distributor yet will not appear on this list. And I should also acknowledge that films' release dates are subject to change. My previous anticipation list had films that got pushed back, so there's a good chance that some films on this list might be pushed back to 2027, so be cautious of that. Number 2, Clayface and Supergirl. Sharing a spot here because they're both DC Universe films, and the two are films that mark big firsts for this new superhero series. Supergirl is the series' first female-led superhero film. Clayface is the first film focusing on a villain. There's also some of the universe's first projects not directed by James Gunn, so it's interesting to see what directors Craig Gillespie and James Watkins bring to the table. With Clayface, it's the first horror project for the universe, which is a rare thing in this genre, and has a screenplay by Mike Flanagan inspired by the Batman animated series episode Feet of Clay. I'm also excited to see Supergirl as it's inspired by Tom King's Great Woman of Tomorrow storyline, and it looks a lot of fun. Both films have a lot of interesting things going on for me. Happy New Year! To bring in 2026, let's talk about last year's movies. The criteria for this list is as follows. Films must have been released in 2025. Awards films that had their wide release in the UK in January and February will not be on this list as they had their limited releases in 2024 and are not 2025 films. Nor will international films that were released in their country of origin in 2024 will be on this list as well. But festival films that premiered in 2024 during the festival circuit but got released to the general public this year have a place on this list. This is my list, and those were my rules. Superman. James Gunn managed to bring the Man of Steel into the 2020s with a timely and exciting adventure, managing to combine his unique sensibilities as a filmmaker and building upon what comes before. Gunn manages to make Superman feel fresh and relevant and most importantly hopeful in a world seemingly less so more and more. Like what you see here? Then please subscribe to my YouTube channel so you can get more Watch This Space but also other things such as my short films. Please remember to like and subscribe to the videos you just watched, and also please check out The Orange Bin, my blog where I have write-ups of my episodes here, which with links to sources that I mention on the show. Also contains some of my old blog posts if you want to see what else I used to do back in the olden days. So please remember to check out my blog and like and subscribe to my YouTube channel.